What is up everyone? Today we'll be building an epic gaming PC for 2016 in preparation for the release of Doom later this year, a game that I've been hyped about for the best part of a decade. But this is no ordinary gaming PC build video. For this project, I decided to use a combination of an older used CPU with a brand new graphics card to see how much bang we could get for our buck with a little bit of smart shopping. Before the mention of used hardware puts you off, don't worry, there's still plenty of new shiny hardware to play with, and I think a few people will be pleasantly surprised with the results. So strap in and prepare for a uniquely extreme build. This is IMNC bringing you a bizarrely cool, bright orange, Doom-inspired PC. After extensive research and endless eBay browsing, I decided that the Sandy Bridge platform provides the best performance for the price on the used market. I managed to snag an eBay bundle comprising of an Intel Core i7 2600K, Gigabyte Z68X UD3P B3 motherboard, 16GB of Corsair Vengeance RAM, and a Corsair H60 liquid cooler. The 2600K was top dog all the way back in 2011, but performance of the top tier Core i7 CPUs on the consumer grade platform hasn't changed as drastically as you may think. The 2600K is still a beast even by today's standards, pummeling anything that AMD currently has to offer into the ground and still rivaling some of Intel's current popular offerings. It's still a total overclocking beast as well. The Gigabyte Z68 board boasts all the modern features that an average person could want, including a couple of PCI Express 16X slots for your graphics cards, SATA 6GB a second for true SSD compatibility, speedy DDR3 memory support, and of course USB 3.0 for connecting modern, high-speed peripherals. This board really doesn't look that different to offerings from Gigabyte today. So far, so good. The RAM and the cooler were a bonus with this bundle, but they suit my needs just fine, so I'll be using them in this build. So what about pricing? Because all of the items in this bundle were boxed and there were extras included, I paid a little more than your average Sandy Bridge bundle goes for on eBay these days. But you'll be shocked to hear that I bought this entire bundle for less than a current generation Core i7 CPU alone. While the Intel 6700K is a newer and faster processor, I got an older workhorse CPU, great quality Gigabyte board, 16GB of RAM, and a liquid cooler. This is the bulk of the system, and that's why I believe that Sandy Bridge is a fantastic option on the used market at the time of recording this video. So that's the hard part over. We've got our platform sorted. CPU, motherboard, RAM, CPU cooler. The rest is all fun stuff. So, without further ado, I think we should build this thing. Okay, so here we have our board. Let's dig straight in and pop in our CPU. As you guys have probably been able to tell by now, this is a fantastic example of a board that is in pretty much new condition apart from a little bit of dust. There is our socket 1155 socket in the middle of our board. Let's pop in our CPU. Here she is. The 2600K. Really looking forward to seeing what this little beast can do in comparison to some of the newer chips today. So with this being a used board, I've just had a quick look at the socket with my magnifying glass just to inspect that none of the pins look visibly damaged. I do trust this eBay seller because I've been chatting with him and he seems like a great guy, so I don't think there's going to be anything wrong with these components at all. So let's pop in the CPU and close down our cover and of course tighten her down. There she is. Our 2600K installed in the socket, ready to rock. Next up is our RAM. Now, with this particular bundle, the person that had this before me, prior to getting the H60 cooler, had a tall cooler on the CPU, so they needed to chop off the top of this particular stick of Corsair Vengeance. So that means that the three other sticks have got their tops, whereas this one hasn't. Not a big deal. I've just been trying to think what slot do I want to put it in where it'll be less noticeable, and because the window of my case doesn't cover this entire side of the system, I think I'm going to put this one in the last slot here. Even though if I was installing a big cooler, it would obviously go in this slot to allow the cooler to sit there, but because it's only going to be a tiny water block and pump, then I'm going to have it in this slot. So let's ping in all of our RAM. So there it is, 16 gigabytes installed, which is ample for gaming. Looks a little bit odd with this one that's had its top shaved off, but once it's in the system, I think it'll look fine. So because we're installing a liquid cooler and I have a nice big CPU cut out on my motherboard tray, I think I'm going to leave everything else for now. I'm going to leave the cooler. I'm going to install that when we have the board in the case. I think it'll be a lot easier. So that's motherboard preparation done and dusted. So this is the Corsair 230T. I chose this case for several reasons. Firstly, you may be able to notice that it's bright orange. Not only is this a very Doom-like colour, it's also my favourite colour. So this is an orange themed build for the most part. It's very difficult to get certain components in orange, and there are some lengths that you have to go to get a good looking build in orange, but hopefully this one, with the precautions that I've taken, will look pretty good. The second thing that I like about this case is the size. It is a mid-tower, but it's not a massive mid-tower. It's a lot smaller than my previous case, which was also a mid-tower, so it's a bit more compact and a bit more stealth, apart from the colour obviously. Thirdly, it's made by Corsair, so it's of wonderful quality, and you can pretty much guarantee that everything in the case is going to be top-notch. Even though this is towards their budget end, it's still a fantastically built case, and I'm very impressed with this case for the price. I would pay 30, 40, even £50 more for this case, especially because the orange finish is so nice. So for all of those reasons combined, I think this is ideal for our build. So let's crack open and take a look at the inside of the case. For a cheaper case, this has got absolutely everything that you could want inside. It hasn't got some of the more flashy features like rubber grommets on the cable management holes, but for the most part, it's all there. Plus, it includes 3 120mm fans, the front two being orange LED, which is ideal for the build. So popping in our I/O shield ready for our motherboard installation, we also have to remove the rear 120mm fan because that is where my radiator will be going, and I won't be using this stock fan, but it will come in handy in the future. Because this is a used CPU, it's important to clean it off, so I used that Arctic cleaning stuff just to get off the old thermal grease if there was any residue, and then clean the CPU just so it makes perfect contact with the new thermal grease and the CPU cooler. Next step is to install our motherboard. So this is really easy in Corsair cases these days. They give you a nice little guide standoff that just pushes through one of the screw holes, so it holds your board in place when you want to screw it in, and you pretty much cannot screw it in incorrectly, and all the standoffs are there in place for you already. Now that the board's in place, we can put in our all-in-one liquid cooler. Because this was a used cooler, just like the CPU, I cleaned it before putting it on. When you get these brand new, you get a nice protective film over the copper bottom to the water block, but of course when it's used, it's got residue of old thermal grease on it, etc. So a nice clean will ensure the best thermal contact between the cooler, your thermal paste and your CPU. So first step to installing the cooler was putting on the backplate and then screwing it down from the other side, a process that was really easy thanks to the very generous CPU cooler cutout on this case. Before installing the water block, I decided to prep the radiator first, so for that we needed our replacement fans. There's nothing wrong with the fan that comes with the H60, but I wanted to run a push-pull configuration for the best temperatures possible, so I chose to get a dual pack of Corsair SP120 Quiet Edition fans because they're efficient, quiet, affordable, and they have colourful rings that are very easily customizable. I think it's very generous that they include 3 rings per fan, so they come with blue installed, but they also come with red and white in the package. But of course, no orange, and you can't buy them separately on their site, so I had to paint my own. For attempt number 1, I decided to brush paint 2 of the fan rings because we had some really nice orange paint. Unfortunately, while the colour was nice, the finish was not, and it was so lumpy and horrible that it actually stopped the fan blades from spinning properly. So I decided to use a spray painted pair for the next pair, and that worked absolutely fine. So they're the ones that are going to be sitting in my build. So having bought a used cooler, I didn't know if I had all of the screws, but it turned out really well. I had 4 screws that came with the H60. I used those to attach the first fan and the radiator to the case, and then I had a second set of 4 screws that came with the case, and I used that to attach the second fan to the radiator. Combining the rubber mounts that came with the case and the ones that are on the fans, this is an extremely well mounted setup that could never cause any additional vibration. I think this is going to be really quiet. I was finding the case a little bit top heavy now, so I decided to go ahead and install the PSU. I went with the Corsair AX860 modular PSU. This is an 80 plus platinum unit of awesome quality. Now I bought this used, but that doesn't contribute to this experiment in any kind of way. It won't impact performance. I just bought it used because I managed to find a deal on eBay and I saved 60 quid, and it came with everything in pretty much brand new condition, so I could not pass up that deal. With this being a fully modular PSU, we can just throw it into the case, screw it in, and worry about all of the cabling later when we come to wire up the system and do all of our cable management. With our build coming together nicely, it's time to put in our drives. Starting with the hard drives, I went with 2 Western Digital Caviar Black 1TB drives. I'm going to have these in RAID 0 for a really nice, big, fast Steam folder storage. These drives are pretty much brand new, but I've had them for a while. I bought them for my main build last year, but I didn't end up using them because in the end, I went for a fully flash-based solution with that build. So I've had these drives knocking about. I thought they'd be ideal for this build. In terms of installing this case, you just slide them in, they snap into place, and that is it. For the SSD, I chose the Samsung 850 EVO 250GB, a fantastic value drive with great speed. I got a 250 because it'll have space for my OS, my apps, and a couple of the crucial games that I want to store on the flash storage, just so that I get really good loading times. I think this will be ample in terms of SSD storage for now. Installation of 2.5-inch drives uses the same basic premise in this case, but it's not executed in quite the same way. It was a little bit loose, so I did put 1 screw in the side. This is the drive from my old build, and it won't be the drive staying in this system. I've ordered a nice Pioneer one for this build, but it's not in stock. Of all the things I ordered, the optical drive is the one thing that they didn't have in stock, so I'm still waiting on that, but the LG one will be fine for now. Because we're saving the best until last, and that is of course the GPU unboxing and installation, we only have one more piece of hardware to put in this case for now, and that is the LED strip. I went for a BitPhoenix Alchemy strip. This is the Connect series, not the Aqua series, so this comes with an adhesive back, which makes it very easy to stick to the case. I chose the BitPhoenix Alchemy, even though it's quite pricey, especially in this country. It's a very simple kit with no faff, no ifs, no buts. You just stick it on, plug it in, and it works. Plus, they have it available in orange, which is more than can be said for most case lighting solutions. So this should hopefully be fairly effective. So now that we have the majority of our hardware in the case, it's time to wire everything up and do our cable management. Now, I know a load of people hate this part, but for me personally, I find it strangely therapeutic. This took me a good couple of hours. I just like getting every individual cable, running it to where it's meant to go, finding a place to tie it out of the way where you can't see it, and making it all as neat as possible. Now the 230T, although it's a mid-tower case like I previously mentioned, it's a very compact case. I like this, I love the size of it, but you do have to sacrifice some space behind the motherboard tray. There is still plenty of space for your average build in terms of the amount of cables that you're going to be cramming back there, but you do have to be careful that they're not too bulky. You do have to tie them down quite flat in order to get the back panel on. In terms of features that Corsair provide with this case to help you out, the main thing that they give you is nice big cable management holes all the way around the motherboard tray. So there is ample space within these cable management holes to route absolutely every cable you could ever want and more, which is great. They're not rubber grommeted, but this can work to your advantage if you want quite an orange interior, because the back panel is orange on the inside as well as the outside. They shine through with a nice orange, and in my opinion, I think it looks really nice. The only thing that you've got to be careful about is if you run stray cables across those cable management holes, they will show up very clearly against the orange panel. So the tricky thing is, you cannot have any cables, any stray cables above the hard drive bays for this reason, or in the background of any of the cable management holes, so tying them all up is essential. This proved to be a little bit difficult, but luckily Corsair do include a few little loops on the back of the motherboard tray to help you tie your cables out of the way. I also used the backplate for the CPU cooler to tie a lot of my stuff, and I crammed a lot of the smaller cables behind the motherboard itself, so in between the motherboard and the motherboard tray, especially the front panel connectors. On the subject of the front panel connectors, they are all black, which is perfect, apart from the audio connector, but luckily this is completely out of the way back by the PSU, so you can't really notice it anyway. My front panel connectors are going behind the motherboard and just poking out underneath the board, so you can barely see them, and I'm really pleased with that. And even the bulky USB 3 front panel cable is tucked behind my PSU power cables, so it's just poking out and you can barely see it. Tying that back with all of the other stuff was a little bit difficult because it's a very stiff cable, but I am so glad that even on this lower end case, all of the cables are black down to the last details. The only slight trouble I had was running power and data to my SSD. Because of the orientation of the drives, you have to have those connectors facing your motherboard. It's quite difficult to make them neat, but I think I made it work the best I could with the particular PSU harnesses that I have, although a SATA power extension would have been easier. So this is a look at the back of my motherboard tray. This is totally finished. This is how it will look back there from now on. I am personally very pleased with this cable management. It looks like a bit of a mess, but if you look at the crucial areas, you can see that there are no stray cables anywhere in sight that would possibly be visible from the front. Talking of the front, here it is. I've put the back panel on so you guys can see that the orange is shining through with no stray cables, and in my opinion, this looks really clean. If you've ever worked inside a 230T, you know this is quite difficult to achieve, so I am personally very proud of this. But that's enough on cable management right now. I've already spoken far too much about it. So we're on to the best part of the entire video. It's time to unbox the graphics card. Now, I went for the AMD R9 380. This one's the MSI Gaming Edition, the 4GB version. I believe these come in 2 and 4GB, but looking at the prices, you may as well go for the 4GB because they seem to be only a couple of quid more than the 2GB versions as of recording this video. So, what were my options while shopping for a graphics card? Well, in my particular budget, the options this time around were between the GTX 960 and the R9 380. Why did I go for the R9 380? Well, firstly, I already own a GTX 960. For those of you who don't know, I have a 960 in my main rig. So I wanted to try something a little bit different. The second reason is at this current moment in time, as of recording this video, the 4GB version of the 380 is the same price as the 2GB version of the 960. So that's a little bit, you know, it sways me to choose this card. And then when you start to research it, you see that the 380 is scoring a couple of FPS here and there more than the 960. I mean, it really depends if you prefer AMD or Nvidia. Personally, I've always used both. I have no preference, and this time around AMD came in slightly on top with the 380, so that's why I've ended up with this card. Of course, this is a brilliant card for 1080p gaming. You can pretty much run most games unless they're crazy demanding. You can pretty much run most of them on high or ultra settings at 1080p with this card. Of course, as of recording this video, once again in early 2016. So this is definitely bigger than my 960. I've got a small Gigabyte Mini ITX version of the 960, so it's nice to hold a big beefy graphics card once again. Let's unpeel. Okay. So, there she is, folks. There she is, looking very nice. Now, of course, this card is covered in red accents, but unlike red and pink, I do believe that red and orange can complement each other, especially with nice bright orange lighting within the case. I think the red will look fine. It'll also match with the red AX logo on the AX PSU, and I think it'll be great, but only time will tell. Let's pop this card into the system. With PCI cards in this case, Corsair give you nice thumb screws and proper PCI covers, so none of that quick release rubbish that you see on some cases. Luckily that's being a little phased out now, it seems, but you get the proper thumb screws, you pop in the card, you screw it back up, and it's very easy to install cards in a case like this. So for crunch time, I've grabbed the camera and we're going to do a little bit of good old-fashioned live handheld YouTube recording to see if this works. I am very tired. This thing has been taking over my life for the past couple of days, or the last week if you include all of the research and trying to get the parts together and stuff. But here we go, it's all led up to this. So display is on, display is not in the correct mode. Now it is, DVI. So, power switch on in the back. That email noise was a pure coincidence. Let's see if she boots. In 3, 2, 1, go. Oh yes, we have booted up successfully. There we have it, folks. Of course, I have no operating system on this machine, but that is the video card outputting to the display. So let's have a quick little check of everything. We have our LED lighting powered on, which is always good. That fan is working. That fan is working. These two fans are working. The optical drive is working. And I definitely heard both of these hard drives spin up. These are the loudest things in the system. Quite quiet, not too bad at all. This PC was built from the ground up to be an affordable system solution that could demolish the Doom system requirements and get the most from that game. Doom isn't out yet, but I feel more than ready for its arrival. Click on the annotation or the link in the video description to check out the next part, where we put this machine through its paces to see what it can do. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to help me out by sharing your appreciation using the methods below. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.